Hi, this is 100 and 100, where we are reviewing 100 VR games in 100 days. Today we're looking at Ultrawings VR. Ultrawings VR is a fun, playful flight simulator that gives you the opportunity to fly in a bunch of different airplanes over a bunch of different scenic islands as you advance in your pilot career to become a pilot with a license. Well, it's a virtual license because this is a virtual reality game. We're excited to review Ultrawings VR with you today and go through all the different aspects of the game so that you can take a look. In our VR Gear game reviews, we cover as many aspects of the game as possible so that you can make an informed decision before you try or buy one of these VR titles. Ultrawings VR was a lot of fun to play, and we think that you'll like this game just as much as we did. So let's start with a review talking about getting up and running with Ultrawings VR. This game can be found on the Oculus Store, the Steam Store, the Viveport Infinity subscription, and in the PSVR store. It currently is selling for $14.99, and the download file is about 3 gigabytes in size, and download should happen automatically, with installation also happening automatically, after which you'll be thrown into the game menu where you can start picking how you would like to play, either in arcade mode or in simulation mode. We started out in arcade mode and got right into leveling up our player and figuring out how to fly our airplane. Early on in the game, the tutorial is integrated into some of the first flights that you take, and a nice woman who speaks to you through your headset will guide you as you interact with your airplane and learn how to take off, land, accelerate, decelerate, and fly through and around the different obstacles. This game is a simulator game, specifically a flight simulator game. It is not necessarily the kind of flight simulator that you can rely on to perfectly mirror what you would need to know or be able to do to get an actual pilot license, but this game simulates flight enough to allow you as a player to have a good time, learn some of the physics of flight, and really get to see the world from high up in the sky. Well, a virtual world in this case. You'll play this game from a first-person perspective from behind the steering wheel of an aircraft, and all you'll see is your hands as they interact with the plane and the world in front of you out the windshield of the aircraft. For theme and story, this game has a clear theme of learning how to fly. You are given points and awarded extra cash as you advance in your skills as a pilot. You can buy new airports, new airplanes, and travel and fly to new areas, all as you progress in your skills. The storyline here is mostly what you make of it. There isn't necessarily a narration that walks you through some sort of epic tale of how a novice pilot becomes an expert, but that might be the story that you experience as you learn the skills of flying. So this game mostly has a flight simulator, flight training theme, and a story is not really there, but that's okay. This game isn't necessarily designed a story-guided game, but more of a playful flight simulator game. For controls, this game has some really simple controls that you'll be able to pick up very quickly. For steering the plane, you can use one hand, and to grab things or to press knobs in the plane, you can pull the trigger on either hand as you interact with the insides of the plane. Other than that, you are flying as you would in a real aircraft with an inverse control. Pushing forward goes down, pulling back goes up, turning right to left. All of these are mapped pretty well to the controls as they would be in an actual airplane. You can accelerate or decelerate as you're taking off or landing, and there's buttons to push to start the ignition. Overall, the controls are very simple. You have grips and triggers, and that's basically it. For music and sound, this game is pretty simple in its application of sound effects and the background music. It's more of elevator music while you're flying, which is interesting, but it seems to fit. It adds to the mood of some serene and casual and relaxing flight, and the sound effects are what you would expect. You can hear the engine as you accelerate, and you can hear the propellers throughout flight. Other than that, the audio is pretty simple. And there isn't much in terms of spatial audio because there isn't very many things going past you or near you that are making sounds that you need to pay attention to. No one's fighting you, and you're not fighting anybody else, so it doesn't necessarily matter where sound is coming from. All said, it's a casual audio experience that is designed, we think, to be a little bit more relaxing than intense. For player movement, you'll be sitting during this game both in the real world and in virtual reality. You'll either be sitting at a desk reviewing flight plans prior to going on a flight. This is where the game menu sits. Or you'll be in the airplane, sitting in the cockpit, flying the airplane. You are moving in the virtual world via the airplane's flight. So you aren't moving necessarily, but the controls and the inputs that you provide the game will allow your airplane to fly. So you'll be moving forward, left and right, up and down, just as a plane would, but you're not moving. The plane that you're sitting in is what's moving in the game. For motion sickness, this game is going to be a really interesting twist of some moments where you feel no motion sickness and you're able to look at the beautiful scenery and just take it all in, and also with moments where you do feel that dropping of your stomach or disorientation that comes from viewing a tilting world when your physical world is not tilting at all. So for example, taking off and landing, this can cause some motion sickness. Banking to the right or to the left, this can also cause some motion sickness for those that are sensitive to it. But when you are in stable flight and your turning is subtle and your takeoff and landing has completed, you won't experience much motion sickness. Also, when you're sitting at your desk going over flight plans, you will not be motion sick there either. How great is that? So if you get motion sick in the plane, go sit at the desk for a little bit to take a breather. For environment and immersion, this is a very expansive game that has a lot of different places that you can fly, but a lot of the flight is very similar no matter what the different locations are that you're flying. So there's 4 different islands that you can fly around. You can take off and land from upwards of 8+ airports, and you can fly in a whole bunch of different airplanes. But after a while, the gameplay itself becomes pretty redundant. And as you learn the skills of flight, that's kind of where you get hooked in the game, is upping your skills. But the game isn't necessarily one where you feel like you're interacting completely with the world. There's not as many controls and knobs and dials in the plane that you can actually control and interact with. And that might be a good thing for the casual simulation game that this is. But as far as interacting with a lot of different options outside of just flying your plane, there isn't much there. The visuals are rich, but they're not necessarily designed to be realistic. They are pretty simple, they are animated, but they are good enough for you to feel like this is a fun, casual flight simulation environment. All said, environment and immersion is a pretty average, middle-of-the-road, but satisfying type environment to play in. We enjoyed it, but it isn't one that we will just remember as the most killer environment we've been in and the most engaging and immersive game we've ever played. Okay, now let's talk about the scorecard for Ultrawings VR, starting with theme and story. We're giving this game a 7 out of 10 for theme and story, and this is a really great score. The game had a clear theme of flight simulator, and the story is what you make of it. The game gets the real points here for having a very strong theme that was very playful for people that want to go fly, but they don't want to have to go through all the pain of learning the technical aspects of flight. So a 7 out of 10 for story and theme. For controls, we're giving this game a 7 out of 10. And that's because this game was never designed to be a realistic flight simulator that has all the controls. It was designed as a very approachable, easy onboarding type flight experience that allows people who are hobbyists that are interested in flight to jump in and play. As a result, there's very few buttons you need to learn, and there's very few buttons you need to use while playing the game, and you can still have a great time. So a 7 out of 10 for controls. For music and sound, we're giving this game a 7 out of 10. This game had all the right sound effects at all the right time, and the music was, interestingly, very helpful in making the flight relaxing and added to the environment to make it less boring if you were just sitting there coasting at a high altitude, not doing much turning. So we thought the sound was great, The game developers did a good job implementing audio that made sense for the context, and so a 7 out of 10 for music and sound. For player movement, we're giving this game a really good score of an 8 out of 10, and that's because this game was designed for a specific purpose, and that wasn't to train real pilots to fly real airplanes. It was designed to help hobbyists and people interested in flying experience flight. As a result, making sure that the player's movement in the game was limited in just the right ways and enabled in other specific ways were done just right. And the game did a great job with that. So we are giving this game an 8 out of 10 for player movement and the proper enablement for players of the game. For motion sickness, we're giving this game the score of 6 out of 10. The motion sickness score, as you know, is a very interesting one. Sometimes games are designed to take advantage of certain visual movement, and it's unavoidable that motion sickness will happen. This game, however, is getting a 6 out of 10, which is above average, but still not a great score. And that's because you are very likely to experience some motion sickness when you're taking off and landing, also when you're banking sharply left to right. This is caused because your visual cues and your physical cues are misaligned from the virtual world and the real world. And so a 6 out of 10 for motion sickness in this game. For environment and immersion, this game is getting a 6 out of 10. There's a lot of room for improvement here, but the game was above average in the environment and immersion. We'd love to see more scenery. We'd love to see more interaction with the aircraft, even if it was simplistic like the ones we already have. And we'd like to see more going on as the player interacts with the airplane from the outside, the inside, along with a story that would help players really connect to the pilot that they are developing into. Otherwise, this game will remain a bite-sized game without anything really compelling bringing you back into a narrative. Okay, now for an overall score for Ultrawings VR, we're giving this game a 6.8 out of 10. That is a really good score that's on the higher end of the score range. It's above average, and we think this game was a lot of fun to play. It was a lot of fun to learn the controls, and it was really great to see the world from up in the sky. It was also fun to learn how to take off and land, although we're not convinced that it is actually like that when you take off or land a real airplane. It was still fun to have that be part of the flight simulation. You're able to find this game on any of the VR stores, and it's currently selling for $14.99. This has been 100 in 100, where we are reviewing 100 VR games in 100 days. Make sure you hit that subscribe button, click the notification bell so that you can be notified tomorrow when we review another VR game. Thanks for watching, and we will see you in the next one.